The Apostle John says he has a reason for writing this particular gospel. And he gives the purpose statement right at the end in chapter 20, verse 30 and 31. He says, I had enough material to write about Jesus' life and teaching. I could have filled all the books in the world. But I've chosen these ones to give you enough evidence that you can believe. So in other words, he chose carefully, he chose selectively what he was going to present to us to prove that Jesus is the Christ and that you can believe in him. So what on earth is going on here in chapter 8? If you read right through the whole of chapter 8, it's just one long series of banter and argument that's going back and forth between Jesus and these guys who say they believe in some places and yet they're actually get to the point where they want to kill him. How is that evidence so that we can believe? Has John blown it here or something? He's including all this banter. Why would I want to believe if it turns out there's a whole lot of people who say they believe and then end up turning away, as we see here in this chapter 8 of John's Gospel. In fact, there are quite a few of them who said they believe. We left off last week, a quick look at verse 30. As Jesus spoke these words, many believed in him. So these are the ones he's now addressing. People who have said they believed, and now they're turning around and arguing back against him. Well, what we've got here is what the modern evangelists would call the worst outreach result in history. Jesus is telling people who already say they believe that you're not really my disciples. But we made our decision, but you're not really my disciples. This would be anathema in a lot of evangelistic efforts these days. And yet Jesus is saying it straight to them. He says they're slaves to sin and they're murderers. So this is John's big evidence so that we can believe. Well, is John kidding that this is evidence for the faith? He's not kidding. He's not kidding. He's deliberately including this exchange here, seeking to convince his fellow Jews in the first century, the Gentiles in the first century, and down to us, that this faith is real. But to tell you that if you want to follow Jesus, there's going to be people who say they believe and are later going to turn away. That's what John's doing. And what's more, he's going to show that the reason they turn away has got nothing to do with evidence. These were the people who were actually there and saw with their own eyes Jesus raise up that crippled man at the poolside back in chapter 5. And it's got nothing to do with evidence. And he's going to tell us why. See, John's Gospel, have you ever noticed, different to the other Gospels? Other Gospels have all these parables of Jesus. He's teaching in parables. And these other sayings. John's different. Have you ever noticed that? How different John's Gospel is? There's no parables, and he doesn't have those sayings about like the ones like in Matthew where Jesus says, "Enter through the narrow gate. Wide is the road that leads to destruction, but enter through the narrow gate. That's the one that leads to life. Only a few find it." Or the parables like in Mark where he has the parable of the sower. You know, some people receive this with joy and go, yeah, Jesus, this is great. And yet there are times they fall away. They fall away. They weren't real believers. And then in Luke's Gospel, he's got those sayings, same sort of sayings about this narrow, strive to enter through the narrowed door. There'll come a time when the door will be closed and there'll be people outside knocking, saying, "Didn't we believe in you?" And he'll say, "Away from me, I never knew." John doesn't have any of those things. John doesn't have any of those parables or any of those sayings about the narrow path. What does John have? He actually is recording it right here for us in chapter 8 a real life example, not just a saying or a parable, a real life example of how people will say they believe, but they will turn away. They are not real believers. That's what John's doing. John deliberately included all this as a way of saying, narrow is the road that leads to life. Only a few find it. So with the beginning of our text reminds us again, verse 31, to the Jews who had believed in him, Jesus said. So what follows is Jesus addressing people who have said they believed, and yet we're going to see that they are not all true believers. So the question we're going to ask this morning is, how do you know whether you're really a believer or not? Plenty of people say they believe, and Jesus is putting a dividing line here and saying, but not everyone who says they believe is the real thing. Narrow is the road that leads to life. This is John giving us the practical version of it. But it's something that is actually all through the Bible. And if you notice when you read through the Bible, how often God's been trying to tell us all the way from the beginning that not everyone who says they're a believer makes it. The first two siblings, one murders the other one right back at the beginning. But then you go on the time of Noah. God floods the earth. How many people were on the earth then? We don't know. Some say 1 billion, some say 7 billion, as many as we have on the earth now. And God was holy enough that he destroys the whole earth except for 8 people. And out of those 8, one of them turns out to be unfaithful. Ham, the son of Noah, and so on. How narrow is... Hasn't God been trying to tell us all along? You look on through the history. Then the Israelites come along. Oh, great, the faithful people of God, right? I remember a relative of ours telling me how he was reading this book on the history of the Jews, the true history of the Jews. And do you know that those Israelites, they were off worshipping other gods? It turns out they weren't really faithful to their God at all. Like he's implying, you better rethink this Bible. No, you should have read the Bible. That's what the whole history, this pitiful history of the Israelites, king after king of Israel, leading the people into more evil than what had been done before, and all the people following. Well, not all the people. There was a remnant. There were always a faithful small number. Narrow is the road that leads to life. A small number of people who were faithful. You hear people say, why didn't the Jews believe in the Messiah? Well, how come they didn't all believe? If he's really the Messiah, why didn't they all believe in him? Well, I think there'd be something wrong with history and prophecy if they did all believe in Jesus when he came, because the promise was only ever for a remnant. There was never a time in the history of Israel where every one of them were faithful. And John here is trying to show us in this gospel the same sort of thing that goes on even in his day. It kept on going into the New Testament when Jesus said, narrow is the road that leads to life. And Jesus said that not to the Romans, the pagans. They weren't listening to Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. It was the believing community of the day that he said, narrow is the road, only a few of you will find it. On into through history of the church. Look at the church. Surely the church wouldn't be like those Israelites bowing down to worshipping idols and so on. But look at the history of the church. Do you know that Muslims actually say that Christians are idolaters, right? They've been saying that all through their history. Where do they get that from? Well, take a look inside church, throughout the history of the church. How many in churches have been worshipping statues and pictures and all those, bowing down to them and saying, oh, well, we don't actually worship, we just use that to worship God, the true God. Great, that's exactly the same thing the Israelites were saying when they built the golden calf and said, look, this is the God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. Nothing has changed. Narrow is the road that leads to life. So today the Bible-believing church is free from that, right? We don't have any idolatry in the church, do we? So much in the church today is so far from that which is found in the Word of God. The Western individualism, the prosperity gospels and the entertainment, caught up in a self-focused idolatry of the self. So the idolatry of the mass and the statues and so on has been replaced by all these, the mosh pits, the rock and roll, the entertainment value and the stage, the lights and the band. You know, the false prophets in Israel spoke beyond God's word. That was replaced by popes speaking beyond God's word. Now, today, everybody's their own pope. We've all got our own word from God that's not found in the word of God. But of course, we're Presbyterians, we're not like that, right? We've got it all together because we have this heritage around the Word of God. Well, that's the exact same defence that these guys were using against Jesus right here. Read with me in verse 33. They answered, we are Abraham's descendants. We've got the heritage. You can't say we're not the true children of God. We're not true believers because we are Abraham's descendants, the heritage. We are the Presbyterians. That's what they're saying. And have never been slaves of anyone. How can you say that we shall be set free? See, Jesus is talking here to the people who did have the right foundation. Abraham's faith was the right foundation. But Jesus still questions whether they're truly his disciples. So what is the answer then? How can you really know if there's this history of the narrow road that leads to life and only a few who find it? How do you know this morning whether you're one of the few? When there's lots of people who say they believe but are not really believers. Well, Jesus answers that for us. Verse 31, let's read it together. To the Jews who had believed in him, Jesus said, if you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. If you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. In the original Greek language, it's literally, if you continue in the word of me. Right? Poor English, we wouldn't translate it that way, but if you, older translation, if you abide in my word, or as this translation says, if you hold to my teaching, continue in the word, hold to my teaching, then you are really my disciples. Now, what does he mean by that? He can't mean perfectly obeying all of his teaching or we're all finished. In fact, so would the guys, the apostles listening. Remember, they were there listening to this. It so impacted John, he wrote down this exchange of what happened, right? John's there listening. Peter and the apostles there listening. Peter, James, John, all the others. But they went on to sin. Peter went on to deny Jesus. They all fled Jesus in the crucial hour. So it cannot mean hold to my teaching and be perfect and then you'll get there. But he has to mean something. He has to mean something. Because he's saying this is what separates you who are not true believers from those who truly are. Because everyone in the church says they believe in Jesus' word, don't they? These false believers here would have said they never deny God's word. There must be something that he's getting at as to how seriously we take his word and trust his promises. And what else? We read earlier from Isaiah 66. Read with me Isaiah 66 verse 2. This is the one I esteem, the one who is humble and contrite in spirit and what? Trembles at my word. Now, if you take this the right way, this is not actually cause for fear trembling. It's actually a cause for rejoicing, something that would actually give you freedom, set you free. And that's exactly what Jesus says. Verse 31 again, read with me again. To the Jews who had believed in him, Jesus said, if you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. The truth will set you free. Not that the truth will make you have to, keep working harder to see if you can get there. Because did you notice when he said that, he didn't say, hold to my teaching and you'll get to be my disciples. He didn't say that. Did you notice that verse? He said, if you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. You're already there. How can that be? Well, his teaching, the heart of his teaching is himself, who he is and what he's done. We've seen it already in this gospel. The Word became flesh, gave himself up for us. What did we already in this gospel? Chapter 6, verse 28 and 29. What have we got to do to works of God? How much of this teaching? I've got to go. What have I got to do? What are the works of God? Jesus said the work of God is this. Believe in the one he has sent. Believe in who he is and what he's done. But wait a minute. There's a lot of people here in this text saying they believe. But it's believing truly in who Jesus is and what he has done and the promises that he has made. And he will set you free. So this is what holding to Jesus' teaching. Not that we can gain enough good points and then he'll set you free. But the truth, if you've got that, it will set you free. The thing that's going to separate us from those who don't truly believe is set you free to do what? See, if you've believed in the promises of Christ, that he really went to that cross to take away your sin, that you are free. Free to what? Free to ignore God and go on and sin because, hey, I got my free ticket now. Don't need to worry about God too much anymore because I'm free. Is that the freedom he's talking about? Is that what's being set free? No, free to hold as precious what God has done and to continue on then in his word. To be free to live as a child of God, holding to his teaching. The Hebrews writer puts it this way. Hebrews chapter 9, verse 14. How much more then will the blood of Christ, that's Jesus' death in our place, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself. Just notice that, the eternal Spirit. There's an eternal work going on at that cross. Have you understood that? Jesus didn't just die a death like people die all the time. Through the eternal Spirit. He paid eternal hell for you. Through the eternal Spirit, he offered himself unblemished to God. Cleanse our consciences. You're free. You're freed from the guilt, from the weighing down. Free our consciences from acts that lead to death, so that what? So that we may serve the living God. Now you go, hey, I could serve a living God before. No, you couldn't do it in freedom. If you're trying to work your way to get good enough for heaven, you are not free. Freedom is believing what Jesus has done, and then I'm free to just serve him. What if I fall over? I can get back up and serve him. He's already saved me. I'm free. For these Jews who had supposedly believed, they went along with Jesus until it clashed with his word. It's like the parable of the sower when Jesus says that, some will receive it with joy until trouble or persecution because of the word comes along. Oh, I don't like that part of the word. Anyone who thinks that the very first time they ever read the Bible is going to agree with everything is kidding themselves. What, are you perfect? How could you agree with everything a perfect God says? There's got to be something in that word that challenges you. Oh, you're free. But you're going to have to continue in the word. And it's going to challenge you and it's going to change you. And some people will, like that parable of the sower, will receive it with joy, but then the word comes along and says, no, you're going to have to change. Some will go, I don't want to change. I don't care how much freedom I've got. I don't care what Jesus did for me. I don't want to change. I'll still just believe. I'll call myself a believer. But you're not a believer. You're not holding to his teaching. You're not holding to his teaching. How often we hear people try to blame it on other Christians and, those over-the-tops, they believe this, or the Presbyterians believe that. Who cares what the Presbyterians believe? Is it in the Word? Is it in here? Well, I know other Christians who don't believe any of that stuff. They don't bother with all that stuff. Who cares what other Christians believe? Is it in the Word? Will you continue in the Word? Will you hold to his teaching? See, these opponents here of Jesus are entering into theological debate using biblical concepts to try and counter Jesus, but he just cuts through and says, when it really comes down to it, you just don't want to continue in the Word. You just don't want the freedom. It's interesting what a reason that most people in the church today, where they get their theology from, for practice, for belief, is what everyone else is doing or believing. How come you have this in yours? Oh, well, that's what many people believe that, so why, how can it be wrong? Many? I don't want to be with the many. Haven't we been just looking at a survey of the Bible that says many who say they believe are not going to make it? Only a few find it. I don't want to be with the many. I want to be with what the Word says. Is it in the Word of God? So Jesus says, if you hold to my teaching, if you continue in the Word. So faith is a faith that's been set free, but it's also one that will persevere. And the beautiful thing is, if Jesus has really touched your heart, if you've really seen that eternal work of the cross, if you've really believed in that word that says what Jesus has done for you, you'll never be the same. You know why? Because it won't be you hanging on to Jesus. It'll be Jesus hanging on to you. That also is in his word. You're in the Father's hand, we'll read later in this gospel. You can't be snatched out. He's hanging on to you. The trouble is, if you really do believe this, I got the fine print, bad news here. God's going to change you. God will change you. He will not leave you the way you are. If you're going to continue in his word, if you're going to hold to his teaching, you won't stay the same. 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 18, we're being transformed into the likeness of God's Son. That's God's plan for you. That's God's plan for you. He's not planning to just save you and just leave you and all this life, all this stuff you go through in your life. Oh, what's this life all about? What am I going? I'll tell you what's going on. God's transforming you, calling you to be transformed. You know, the rank unbeliever will tell you, I go along with the 10 Commandments, until you actually show them the 10 Commandments, and then they don't want to know because they don't want to change. And that's the key. Are you ready to be changed? Because we're the rough cut and God's going to knock off the edges. He's going to change us. See, a lot of people say they believe in the word until they are challenged with the fact that you're going to have to change. The word actually challenges and changes and tests our heart. It's like those, paper pregnancy testings they do, I'm pregnant, that's what the word is like, one of those, a litmus test, It actually tests out where your heart really is. Will you obey when the word challenges you to change? Will you trust and believe that God knows more than you do and that he is right to want to change you and that he's right in what he's doing in your life right now to change you? Oh yeah, but I'd be better off if I went this way. No, will you believe in God, in Jesus, in his word? Because if you continue on in his word, it's got to change you. You won't become perfect, as we said before. In fact, what amazes me is how patient God actually is with us. Boy, if being a Christian was, how well you're doing, I'd have gotten stamped out long ago, I remember when I first became a Christian, I didn't actually, I wasn't even going to church. And I said, I'm not going to be going to, that's for the over-the-tops. I'll believe, but I'll do it from my place. And unless someone can show me in the Word, then I'm not going to do it. And then someone showed me, so I changed. So I started going to church. And I can look back at those early years of my Christian walk and, the kind of language I used until someone showed me in the Word. And I read it in the Word for myself. I've got to change. No, I didn't keep the Lord's Day. I didn't have anything, I think anything of copyright theft, music and movies or whatever, until I saw in the Word, the 8th commandment. You're breaking the 8th commandment, you're stealing, stop, you've got to change. And so on. I can think of several things that were going on in my life. Minor gambling. I used to do a Tats Lotto ticket until I discovered in the Word that I'm breaking the 10th commandment. So I had to change. Used to check my horoscope until I saw in the Word, Isaiah 47, abomination. So I had to change. I was single at the time. I didn't know you weren't supposed to go out with a non-Christian, let alone marry a non-Christian. Thankfully, I married a Christian. But when the Word showed me, I changed. Now, the thing that I want to tell you about all that is, I was every bit as much a Christian back there when I was not going to church on my own as I am now. Every bit as much. Because what makes you a Christian is Jesus and what He has done and faith in Him. But if you have real faith, when the Word shows you you're in the wrong direction, you will change. That's a test. That's a test. The test for me was not my sins and failures where I was up to, but what are you going to do when the Word shows you you're going wrong? You're doing the wrong thing. Has the cross of Christ affected you to the point that you will hold to His teaching as precious and believe and trust that His way is right, no matter what it might look like or what I might have to give up or what I might have to start or whatever? So you can take that litmus test right now when you read the Word of God. How do you react when it requires you to change, even little things or bigger things? If the Word challenges you, are you just going to say, well, look, I'm not like those over the tops. I do most of the Christian things. You're pregnant. Failed a test. Come back to the Word. Let it do its work. And believe. How did you get to be a Christian? You believe. And so the trials ahead, and when you've got to make hard decisions to follow the Word, how can you do that when it looks bad? God's way looks bad, my way looks good. What are you going to do? You've got to believe. You've got to trust. The same place that got you saved in the first place will take you all the way. Trust and believe. Continue in His Word. Jesus is saying here, you can start out well, but only if you continue in His Word will you know the truth that sets you free. To the Jews who believe, Jesus said, if you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. So there you have it. Truth of Jesus sets you free. And if you're really free, you're free to hold on to His teaching. So just to finish, isn't it about time we got serious about opening up that Word and reading it as daily bread to feed on and believe that I'm not going to find anything in here that's going to be bad for me. It's going to be what God wants for me. Isn't it about time we really got serious about getting into the Word of God? Let's pray. Father in heaven, how can we ever thank you enough for the truth that sets us free? Jesus our King, going through that eternal suffering of the cross, the separation from the eternal Father that has set us free to walk with you, to hold to your teaching, to serve you. And Lord, help us to see both of these things, how crucial it is to put our trust in Jesus, but also to trust that your word will not give us anything that's for our bad, but only for our good. We pray it all in Jesus' name. Amen.